In fact, you care more because, like, well, hey, I mean, like, I own a piece of this, so like, I have to kind of care here. I have to at least make an effort on my part. When you remove ownership from the masses, from the people who make up your country, your nation, your tribe, whatever you want to call them, okay, your clan, whatever you want to call them, okay. When you remove ownership from them, they have no incentive at all to really care, right? And this is why we have people complaining about, why are people voting for property taxes? Because there aren't enough property owners. If there's more property owners tend to not vote to increase their taxes, right? So you want to have a nation of people who own. You do not want a nation of people who rent. A nation of people who rent perpetually is destructive. It's extremely destructive. So when you understand that, you understand my position on the whole rent seeker problem. My problem with them isn't that they're renting a house. Like, I don't care about that. Okay? Like, that's not the issue. It's that you have a bunch of people who say, I want to have a whole bunch of tenants forever. That's a problem if you live in a country that is not designed nor intended to be a nation of renters. The U.S. in particular was never designed or intended to be a nation of serfs. It wasn't intended for that. It was none of the laws were designed for that. The laws were originally designed for people to own, like actually own property in their country. Okay, we're talking about personal, private property. The idea of private property has unfortunately been expanded into this idea of, well, okay, we can print a bunch of fake dollars and then use those fake dollars to buy up all of this property and call it private property. That is not private property in my mind. Not if you counterfeited a bunch of money. If you counterfeited a bunch of dollars and then you gave it to somebody for, like, put yourself in that situation. What if you were a counterfeiter and you counterfeited a bunch of $100 bills and then you went and bought something with it, right? Where in the law is that a legal transaction? It's not, right? They wouldn't say, oh, hey, you get to keep all this now that you bought. No, that's not how that works, right? You're like, oh, hey, you need to give all that back because you didn't have, well, that's exactly what's happened is you have the bankers that own the United States, that own all your politicians. Each one of them has a banker operative that follows them around apparently everywhere in Congress and tells them what to do. So the bankers that own all of this, and this, by the way, is why they hate TikTok. Going back to my original conversation, this right here, this is why they really hate TikTok. Right what I'm talking about. Because they don't want people owning, they want people renting. They want people paying rents and interest and everything. That's what they want. They want Pottersville. Go watch It's a Wonderful Life. Last month it was on, well, it was supposed to be on all the time if we had old TV and everything. But go back and rewatch that. And don't rewatch it for a Christmas movie. Rewatch it as an economics lesson because that's exactly what it is. It's an economics lesson. And it's also a lesson in banking. It's a lesson in the way that the oligarch thinks to get people owing, constantly having to go back and borrow and borrow and borrow and always be owing. That is exactly what that movie is all about. Frank Capra was a genius, and I assure you, Frank Capra was persona non grata in Hollywood. You can look up the legacy of Frank Capra. He wasn't really exactly liked by a lot of people in Hollywood. He was liked by Jimmy Stewart and a few others. But I mean, he would have been like sort of like your, I'm trying to think of the equivalent. He would be sort of like your Clint Eastwood of the day, back in the 40s, 30s, 40s kind of thing. He'd have been sort of the Clint, he's not down with this whole agenda of pushing all this weird propaganda on the American people. No, he wasn't. He was actually trying to explain what was going on, which is why if you watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is also another Frank Capra film, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious his stance. These are black and white movies, okay? I mean, I don't mean black and white as in like good and bad. I'm talking about like they're actually black and white. I think Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was made in like 1938, I think. It's been a little while, but anyway, go watch it. And that will explain it. So the concept of ownership has been robbed from kids. They don't understand it now. They don't understand like you are supposed to own. not supposed to be forever renting. And we have a nation of people, unfortunately, that have, rent seekers and boomers and bankers and other people who go down this road who exploit this constantly. They're not exploiting the workers. No, what they're doing is they're exploiting the banking system, and they're pumping these prices up and then saying, okay, look, hey, I paid a bunch of money for this. I overpaid for all of this. Okay, so now you need to overpay too. That's exactly what's happened. And so, yeah, I mean, like and so it drives these fake prices up, but wages didn't keep up with any of it, and they can't. They can't. The whole point of inflation, by the way, just so you know, for anybody out there, the point of inflation is that you can't keep up with it. If you could keep up with inflation, then there's no point in having inflation. I hope that makes sense. The point of inflation is that you can't keep up with inflation. That's the point of inflation. That's a feature. That's not a bug. That's a feature. That's designed into the system. Okay? And I don't care what ism you want to call it. It's designed into it. It's a system of control. It's a system of farming. That's all it is. So it's designed that you can never keep up with it. And it ruins your ownership. That said, I think personal real estate is very important. Do I think that it's a good idea to go create a whole bunch of nation of renters? No. I think, in fact, actually the consequences of that are actually more detrimental than you can realize. And of course, none of the rent seekers want to hear this, but this is the truth. People eventually stop caring about you, because why should they care about you? Why should they care about your ownership? They don't own anything. What do they care? That's the problem. And before you know it, it's like people become indifferent to anything that happens to you. You get shoved down a flight of stairs and crack your head open and such because, that actually happened to a rent seeker. People become indifferent to it, right? They get Brian Thompson on the streets of New York. People become indifferent to it. Okay? I mean, like, this is just reality. And if you want to prevent that, it's very easily preventable. You stop doing that kind of stuff. You stop looking at people as economic units, and you start looking at them as like, well, are these your countrymen? Are they not? You don't have to be their keeper. You don't have to do anything for them. In fact, you don't do anything for them, but you can stop ripping them off. That you can do. You don't have to make good for anybody. You can not rip someone off, and you can just say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. I can actually go do my own thing, and and as long as you own stuff and you're not hugely in debt, then it's very easy to live life on your terms. I've already covered the live life here. I'll cover this at retirement some other time. So, Axel, what is your name? There you go. LA fires and insurance companies. I talked about it earlier on. I think the LA fires are going to be bailed out. I mean, all the insurance companies that are there, that they're going to be forced to pay off for all that stuff. They will be forced to pay for it, because the people that are there in those areas, they have money, and so they'll just sue them into submission, and so they're going to get bailed out, and so that means that the American people get to eat all of that. That's what that means. The American people as a whole are going to eat however many billions and billions of dollars. And if they say it's $58 or $60 billion for the damage, it'll be 350 by the time they're all said and done.